Berlin shimmered like ice under a $1 million chandelier. The gala was held at Kollwitz Haus, a brutalist monument turned luxury event space on the edge of Mitt. Concrete walls softened by moody amber lights, champagne glinting in tall flutes, voices bouncing in refined murmurings. No one there wore coats, though the December air outside could cut glass. Leon Hartman stood at the center of the spectacle like the eye of a snowstorm, immaculately suited in black-on-black Armani, cufflinks catching the glow. He wasn't mingling, not really, he never did. But he was seen, as he always was, composed, unreadable, formidable. Billionaire founder of Hartman Systems, a tech empire straddling 2 continents and more than a few ethical gray areas. His fiancée, Annalise Roth, stood exactly half a step behind and to the left. The positioning was deliberate. Everything with Annalise was. Her dress was architectural and minimalist, a sharp slash of white silk that matched her smile, flawless and cold. Together, they looked perfect, almost frighteningly so. They also looked like strangers. Leon held her hand lightly, more like an obligation than a gesture of affection. The diamond on her finger was precisely the kind that drew camera flashes. As the press snapped photos, Leon leaned in on cue and kissed her temple. "There," Annalise murmured under her breath. "One more perfect shot for your investors." He didn't respond, but the corner of his mouth twitched. She was right. The whole engagement was a staged merger of image and capital. Hartman Systems wanted access to European defense tech. Roth Group wanted in on Leon's clean energy IP in Latin America, but neither board trusted goodwill alone. So, the lawyers had devised a romantic farce to grease the wheels. A formal engagement, 6 months, and 1 binding clause. No scandal, no cheating, no headlines that would make shareholders the MistressClause. No one called it that in writing, of course. But Leon knew the cost of a whisper in the wrong direction. He'd watched entire stock prices plummet over rumors. He'd lost before. He wouldn't again. "Don't look now," Annalise said smoothly, "but your new hire is headed this way." Leon turned just slightly, enough to glimpse the woman weaving toward him with the event coordinator in tow. She was tall, caramel-skinned, and angular, her walk efficient, her gaze cool and alert. Camila Reyes, the interpreter. She wore no diamonds. Her dress was simple navy, modest but well cut, her dark hair pulled into a knot at her nape. Nothing screamed for attention. And yet, she drew his eye. The coordinator gestured toward him. Camila extended a hand. "Señor Hartman," she said with crisp Spanish. "Un placer conocerlo. I'm Camila Reyes. I'll be working with you during your Latin American tour." He took her hand, surprised by the firmness of her grip. Her eyes, almond-shaped, discerning, met his without a flicker of deference. Not flirtation, not intimidation, just evaluation. "You're early," he said. She raised a brow. "German punctuality rubs off when you work with German clients." That earned the ghost of a smile from him. Barely. Annalise, watching, leaned in. "Camila, was it? You'll be joining Leon in Bogotá next week?" "That's right," Camila replied. "I specialize in legal, technical, and political interpretation. I've worked with ambassadors and corporate boards. I assume this trip involves all 3. Leon didn't miss the subtle emphasis on assume. She wanted clarity, boundaries. He appreciated that. "Miss Reyes," he said, "we'll meet tomorrow at Hartman HQ. 0900, have your passport ready." "I always do." She nodded once and turned, heels clicking softly on the stone floor. Leon didn't watch her go, but Annalise did. "She's sharper than the usual ones." "There are no usual ones," Leon said. But he couldn't shake the faint hum of something that had stirred in him, something he'd taught himself not to feel anymore. 2 days later, Bogotá. The diplomatic dinner was all dull suits and oily charm, hosted in a neoclassical hall with gold ceilings and a string quartet that never took a break. Leon sat flanked by ministers and CEOs, his expressions smooth but flat. Camila was at his side, interpreting the side conversations in precise, near-whispered Spanish. She was, objectively, excellent. But Leon had a problem. He understood enough Spanish to know when a word had been substituted, not incorrectly, but artfully. The agriculture minister had made a crude metaphor about Latin American resources being a mistress to European industries. Camila translated it as a dependent relationship built on imbalance. Leon glanced sideways. "Not quite what he said," he murmured. Camila barely tilted her head toward him. "No, but exactly what he meant. A beat." Then, against every ironclad instinct he'd honed, Leon smiled. Camila looked at him. Really looked. Something passed between them, silent but sharp. Recognition. A flicker of alignment in a room full of masks. Then the waiter approached with wine, and the spell broke. But Leon's mind, famously unshakable, drifted. He should have known better. Should have pulled back then and there. Instead, he watched her lips move through half a toast and thought not about the merger or Annalise or the $1 billion on the line. He thought about how quiet the room felt when Camila stood next to him and how dangerously loud it would become if they ever stepped 1 inch closer. The Bogotá sky didn't sleep. Even at midnight, it glowed faintly orange with city light, humming with distant engines and music that never quite died down. The Hartman delegation had taken over a colonial-style hotel nestled between 2 embassies, its balconies wrapped in ivy and shadows. Camila sat in the empty lobby, a single lamp casting a warm circle over her notepad. Her hair had come undone from the tight twist she'd worn all day. In this quiet moment, with her shoes off and her mind too wired for rest, she didn't look like a poised professional translator. She looked like a woman on the edge of too much thinking. "Still working?" came Leon's voice. She didn't jump. She never did. But she looked up slowly. He stood at the edge of the room, his jacket off, tie loosened, dress shirt sleeves rolled up to his forearms. The calculated precision of his public image was gone, and in its place stood the real version. Slightly unraveled, quietly dangerous. Camila raised an eyebrow. "You're the one with a $1 billion merger on the line. Shouldn't you be asleep by now?" Leon didn't answer right away. He crossed to the empty armchair across from her and sat, uninvited but not unwelcome. "You speak differently when you're not interpreting," he said. She tilted her head. "What do you mean?" "You choose your own words. Less diplomatic, more direct. Most people don't want direct." "I do." The air tightened ever so slightly. Camila held his gaze for a second too long. Then she returned to her notebook. "Some of us don't get to say what we really mean." Leon watched her for a moment. "You're not impressed by any of this, are you?" "By what?" He motioned vaguely to the chandelier, the marble floors, the tailored suits that came with security details. "All of it," Camila smirked. "You mean the power or the illusion of it?" Leon let out a rare, soft laugh. "Not performative, real." "You're dangerous," he said, mostly to himself. Camila looked up again. Only to people who lie to themselves. Later that week, Mexico City, the next leg of the expansion tour, moved them through Mexico City, a blur of corporate boardrooms, embassy dinners, and PR events. But it was in the in-between moments, not the grand stages, where the gravity built. Shared car rides, where Camila said little but radiated calm. Airport lounges, where they exchanged books instead of small talk. Late evenings, where Leon would find her in hotel bars with her laptop, Spanish indie music in her headphones, translating contracts with a glass of wine at her side. He never asked to join. He just did. And she never told him to leave. One night, the rooftop. It started with a knock on her door just after 11 p.m. "I need air," Leon said. Camila hesitated, then grabbed her coat and followed him up the private stairwell to the rooftop. The city sprawled before them, buzzing, restless, alive. They leaned on the railing in silence. Below, car horns sang in the distance and a warm breeze pulled at her hair. "You're Spanish?" Leon said suddenly. "It's not Colombian." Camila turned. "Half Spanish, actually. My mother's from Madrid. My father was born here. I grew up between both." "Was?" She didn't answer at first. Then she exhaled. "He left when I was 13. Disappeared, really. Just gone. He was always a little unreachable, a dreamer. Charming, irresponsible, the kind of man people forgave too easily." Leon said nothing, but his stillness changed, sharpened. "I told myself I didn't care," Camila went on. "But I became someone who translates other people's voices for a living. Maybe that's just a poetic way of saying I wanted someone to listen to mine." Leon turned toward her fully. "I'm listening now," he said quietly. Camila blinked. Her breath caught. The rooftop felt too small suddenly, too close. "I hate that part of me still wonders why I wasn't enough to stay for." Leon's expression cracked just slightly. "I know that feeling," he said. A long pause. Their hands were resting side by side on the iron railing. Her pinky brushed his. She didn't move, neither did he. When she finally turned her face toward him, their mouths were inches apart. The city vanished. Time stilled. Camila whispered, "I can't." The words shattered the quiet. She stepped back, breath trembling. "Of course you can't." I meant it when I said I'm listening, he added, softer now. But this, we can't. There's a clause. If the merger falls through, Camila laughed, sharp and tired. Then you lose your billion-dollar bride. Leon's jaw tensed. It's not like that. No, because from here it looks a lot like a man hiding behind a contract to avoid having to feel something real. His silence said everything. She shook her head, pain flickering across her face. You can trust me with your language, your secrets, your silences, but not with you. Camila turned and walked away. Leon didn't follow. Not that night. Chapter 3: The Break. São Paulo burned at midnight. Not with fire, but with heat, the kind that clung to skin and hearts alike. The Hartman team had rented out the top floor of a high-rise for meetings with Brazilian investors. The view was endless. The air smelled like rain and iron and tropical bloom. Leon stood on the balcony, tie off, shirt unbuttoned at the collar. His phone buzzed again. Another text from Annalise. We need to talk. Not as partners, as people. He didn't reply. Instead, he turned his attention to the room behind him, where Camila stood by the minibar, pouring herself something clear and straight. She hadn't said more than a few words to him in 2 days, not since the rooftop in Mexico City. She looked contained, controlled, not cold exactly, but distant. Her walls were up, and Leon hated how much he missed the sound of her voice when it wasn't behind professional polish. Camila, he started. She didn't look up. Is this about the schedule for tomorrow? Because I sent it to your assistant hours ago. That's not what I meant. She turned then, eyes guarded. Then you'll have to be more specific. I don't read between lines anymore. Leon stepped forward. About that night? Don't, she cut in, sharp but quiet. If you're going to apologize, don't. And if you're going to pretend it didn't happen, don't do that either. The room buzzed with silence. Before either could say more, the suite door opened. Annalise. She walked in like she owned the building. Her hair was in a sleek bun, heels unapologetically loud. Her eyes scanned the scene, instantly catching the tension. Oh, good, she said, unbothered. All the uncomfortable truths in one place. Camila straightened. I'll leave you two. No, Annalise said, tone like a knife. Stay. Leon stiffened. What are you doing here? What, no hello? She walked past him and dropped her purse onto the marble counter. I'm tired, Leon. Tired of pretending we're something we're not. Of shaking hands and kissing cheeks and smiling in photos with a man who barely looks at me. Camila's eyes flicked to him, unreadable. Annalise faced him now. You know what I realized last week? I don't want to marry someone who has to be managed, who hides in contracts instead of conversations. Leon rubbed his jaw. So what are you saying? I'm saying you've already chosen. You just haven't admitted it to yourself. Then she turned to Camila. He won't say it, so I will. It's not your fault, but he'll break you before he bends. With that, Annalise swept out, a storm of restraint and truth in designer heels. The door clicked shut. Camila didn't move. You didn't even flinch. I knew it was coming. She laughed once, dry and joyless. You let her say all that in front of me. I didn't let her. Leon, she snapped. You looked at me like I was the first person you actually saw in years, and then you disappeared back into your shell like it never happened. I didn't disappear. No? Because you didn't speak to me for 2 days. Silence. The words hovered, bitter and raw. Before he could answer, Camila's phone buzzed with a message. Her face changed as she read it. Confusion, then something darker. She looked up slowly. You asked for the clause. Leon's eyes flicked to her. What? The clause about fidelity. No scandal. It wasn't just legal. You insisted on it. His throat tightened. Who told you that? Does it matter? He said nothing. Camila stared at him like she was seeing him fully for the first time. It wasn't to protect the merger, she whispered. It was to protect you from being seen, from ever having to risk anything real again. Leon's jaw clenched. There was a woman, wasn't there? She said. He looked away. Years ago, when my company was just starting, she sold the story to the press after we broke up, said I used her for press connections, that I manipulated her. Camila's expression shifted, not pity, but something close. I didn't, Leon said. But it didn't matter. The headlines did what headlines do. My board almost forced me out. So you made yourself untouchable. He didn't reply. Camila stepped back. I understand now. You don't build walls to keep people out. You build them so you never have to step out yourself. That's not fair. It's not supposed to be fair. It's supposed to be honest. He reached for her then, desperate, half unthinking. Camila, she stepped away. I'm not her, she said, but you're still him, and I won't be another footnote in your damage control. And then, without ceremony or drama, she left. Leon didn't move, didn't call after her, didn't breathe, really. The silence she left behind was different than all the ones before. It didn't echo, it pressed in like weight. He thought he'd protected himself, but in trying to avoid scandal, he'd created the only one that mattered, the kind you can't spin, the kind you feel. End of part 1. They crossed the line, and it cost them both. He broke the rules he wrote to protect himself. She broke the vow she made to never fall for men like him. Now, they're in the wreckage of what could have been, split by pride, fear, and the silence between two people who wanted more but didn't know how to ask for it. But the story isn't over. The real love stories don't burn out at the first crash. They rebuild from the ashes. Want to know what happens next? Part 2 is coming, where distance turns to reckoning, hearts begin to heal, and choices finally mean everything. Subscribe, follow, or turn the page, because the most dangerous love isn't the kind that breaks rules. It's the kind that makes you rewrite them.